Something else, Judd, has been on my mind because of the internet. The internet loves to argue about running the football. And I mean every single day on Twitter, the football people I follow, analytics people, I don't even want to call them old school, but just analytics people versus everybody else talking about running the football. And there are a lot of analytics people that have the data to back it up to show you that you shouldn't really be running all that often, if ever, but probably you should at least to have some play action game. If you never ran, then you can't fake a run.
Right.
But only enough running game to fake the play action. You can run on first down, you can run on third and short, you can run at the goal line. But aside from that, you're talking about it not being a very efficient play. And that got me thinking, Judd, about the Minnesota Vikings and how they've decided to build on the offensive side. They did not invest huge money in a wide receiver 3. They invest a draft pick and a tight end, which helps your running game with 2 tight end sets. They get a center who is known for, you guessed it, being a great run blocker in his own system. And they bring in Gary Kubiak, whose offense for a very long time in the zone running system has been known for being great at rushing the football. Dalvin Cook is very talented. We know that. And this team in 2017 was one of the strongest running teams in the league. That certainly did not hurt. But Judd, do you think that they have taken the right approach by bringing in someone to help their run game? Drafting Dalvin Cook with a second-round pick is a big investment for a running back, unless you're really, really sure the guy's a Hall of Fame talent. And the center was entirely to help the run game there. Do you think that the Vikings are taking the right course on offense by investing a lot in running the football?
I do, and here's why. I think given what we saw during the course of the 2018 season from the offense, from the way it was run, from the quarterback who operated it, I think if we back off for 1 second and we don't hold it against Zim that he continually talked about because he likes to harp on things at press conferences, running the football. And I think people got tired of that. And I also think people didn't get that because their sense was he's old school. He just wants to run.
Yep.
But that wasn't it. If you look at the investment in Cousins and you go back to the fundamental key question in my mind when it comes to this offense now going into this season is this: what makes Cousins and the operation of this offense most successful? And I think if your answer comes back with, well, just throw more, get more creative and throw more, because look at what the Rams are doing, or look at what the Chiefs are doing, I think you are setting yourself up for dismal failure. So I think the Vikings, given what they have personnel-wise to work with, went and hired Kubiak based on the fact that he likes to run the ball and is very good about coming up with zone blocking schemes and designs to run the football. They are making the right move because the most important thing comes back to this. This is not a window of opportunity that's going to last long here. This is Kirk Cousins year 2. He's got 3 years. This was done from day one to win a Super Bowl immediately. And judging from what we saw this offense attempt to do in 2017 or 18, that was not successful. So there had to be adjustments made and a philosophical viewpoint shift, which they have made. So I think for what the Vikings are trying to do now, I'm not saying long-term and they might draft a quarterback and things might change completely, but for what they want to do going into the coming season, in which I'll go back to it, the expectation is a championship, they are making the right decision.
Okay, so I could see it that way looking at some of Kirk Cousins' shortcomings, and you want Kirk Cousins to have third and short and not third and long. If he throws an incompletion, if he takes a sack. Now, this is something we don't talk about a lot when it comes to offenses and passing games. If you look at just yards per attempt, you're going to get 7 yards per throw. But if you take away that and you look at only the yards per attempt with the sacks, and you get sacked 40 times a year as he did last year, and this is not a guy with exceptional pocket presence that's going to lower that number in half. I would still put him at 30-something sacks this year, more likely than not, considering his left tackle is, to me, bottom third of the league as a pass blocker, as a run blocker. He's better. And you have to play to your strengths to that extent. And on the offensive line, Pat Elflein, not an amazing pass blocker. Riley Reif, not an amazing pass blocker. Brian O'Neill, I'm going to have to see it before I believe he's a great pass blocker. I think right now he could still get overpowered by stronger defensive ends. And Josh Klein, I know for sure from watching the tape, when he is overpowered by somebody on the other side, he just gets run right back into the quarterback. But he is a good zone blocking, run blocking offensive lineman. So in a way, they've built the offensive line by the pieces that they've picked up along the way, whoever the best center was to pick, whoever the best guard was to pick to put this thing together piece by piece. And what they've come away with, especially with Brian O'Neill's athleticism, is a really decent offensive line in terms of run blocking. You also have a running back who has explosive ability beyond what I think about 85% of the league has. Maybe there's 5 other guys. He ran like 23 miles an hour on a 70-yard touchdown run last year. I mean, Dalvin Cook is a special caliber of running back who is capable of a home run play all the time. Do you have to factor those things in? You can't just look at, yards per attempt are X, Y, and Z. And a lot of that too is if you run on 3rd and 1, you get 2 yards. If you factor all those in, you go, well, it's only 2-yard run, but that's exactly what you needed at that time. So put all that kind of in a pot. I still think it's not the right way to build, because when you look at the teams that were in the championship games last year, they're the top passing offenses. And I don't believe that it's impossible for Kirk Cousins to have one of the best offensive games through the air, because he's done it before in 2016 in Washington. Statistically, one of the best passing games in the league that year. Now, he had a much better offensive line, for sure. But this is 2019. And if you're going to have a truly explosive and dangerous offense, you have to be one of the most efficient passing games.
Yes, and if they thought that there was a good opportunity that he could do that with any sort of consistency, they might go that direction. But we all saw 2018, Matthew. And to me, it comes back to, because the window is so short here, what gives you the best? If you tell Kirk, go to it, son, you go out there and you be that 2016 quarterback, the odds of that happening are probably pretty small. So this is, and keep in mind too, this is also built on, because it always goes back. I will go back to what it always goes back to in Egan: defense. This goes back to Mike saying to himself, my defense needs to rest, right? If we can effectively run the ball and matriculate it on the ground, that keeps my defense off the field and thus gives it a better chance to succeed when it's on the field.
Which, by the way, is a proven fallacy.
But that's how he would think.
Yeah. No, you're right. But
that's how he would think.
It's a classic NFL fallacy. Yes. Is Tom Brady moving the ball down the field 1 pass at a time, 8 yards at a time. That keeps you on the field better than running inefficiently.
But he wants in his mind the rest that can possibly come with long drives. So anyway, the point being is if they sat down with you and said, break it down, you would say, okay, here's XYZ. But I think what we don't look at enough from their perspective is probably a sense of panic of, oh my God, how do we get to where we need to be as quickly as possible? Because this again comes back to, worst case is not disappointment in 2019, Matthew. Worst case is people get fired. And so they are in a rush, and this is the worst thing to have to be in sports, but they are in a rush to get the payoff immediately. They can't build towards that payoff.
So I was just looking at some numbers. The team that had the lowest turnover percentage, this is a huge part for Mike Zimmer. He obsesses over the turnovers, in which you could argue that, look, I know what you mean with the turnovers, but it's really hard to control. If even the teams that pass the ball a lot will sometimes turn it over a lot, sometimes they won't. Take, for example, the New England Patriots. They were one of the most efficient passing games in the NFL. They were 29th in turnover percentage. The Los Angeles Rams threw the ball all over the place, 25th. Actually, I mean this in a good way. I'm sorry. Don't take that wrong. Let me resort it. So
they're tops.
New England was the 4th best.
Okay.
So I had sorted it backwards by the most turnovers. So New England was the 4th best at not turning the ball over, and they threw it all over the place. So did the Rams. The Vikings. Now, last year, I think if you asked Mike Zimmer, hey, where do you rank in turnovers? He would have said, bottom 5. We've been awful in turnovers. They were actually 13th best. They didn't turn the ball over as much as you thought. It's just every time they did, it turned into a touchdown for the other team.
Which is a big deal.
He obsessed over turning the ball over. And I think because Seattle was the top running team and they turned it over very little, they were number one in turnover percentage, so fewest turnovers.
Yep.
That you would think, okay, well, that's because they ran the ball.
Yep.
And there is a good argument for that if you're running it, then you're not turning it over. And if you run it enough, yeah, maybe you can wear teams down and things like that, which may or may not exist in today's NFL with the great shape that players are in. I don't know about physical intimidation in the fourth quarter and stuff like that. I think there's probably some to it, but it's very hard to prove. What it comes down to me is all about Kirk Cousins, is why they want to design everything around the running game. It's not just happenstance. It's Dalvin Cook was a special player to drop to the second round. They knew that. It was because of some of the background issues at Florida State, some of the people he had surrounded himself with, and he had the trial there and everything else. So that was why he dropped down to the second round. I get that. That's a value play, and that's a good draft pick. Everything else just screams like we want to make sure that we protect everything around Kirk Cousins in a similar way that they tried to do around Case Keenum. And then the other thing, now this is where I think that Mike Zimmer has it right in wanting to run the ball a lot, is if other teams think you're running the ball a lot, there is definitely some effect of drawing them a little bit closer. Now, quarterbacks can still succeed with a bad running game, but you have to run to set up play action. And what Zimmer believes, and he has said on the record, is through play action, you can get explosive plays. It's not just about completion percentage or quarterback rating. It's about hitting plays down the field.
Yeah.
So there's something I was looking at the other day that they do in OTAs, and they're practicing it, where you run a play action and the wide receiver, let's say to the quarterback's left, runs a route all the way to the right side of the field. It's like a deep cross. So your quarterback fakes play action. He rolls out right. And if they bite on it even a little, that receiver's wide open 30 yards down the field. And you see this. I mean, this is the most classic Gary Kubiak play. That is what Mike Zimmer is looking for. So I can justify you have a home run running back. You have a quarterback who is exceptional with play action. You have more opportunities to hit big plays with play action. My concern is, though, 2nd and 10. If you throw an incompletion on first down, you get 2nd and 10, and you hand the ball off, that is statistically the worst play call you could ever make. And my guess is we're going to see some of those this year. And this team can't afford to make any inefficient play calls because they do not have one of the top quarterbacks.